Good morning. Let's see if we can get this thing started, shall we? Come on, Periscope. Let's do this. Sorry, just getting set up here. I'm still relatively new at this, Let's see. Got to get the comments up. Welcome to the daily quarantine. It is day 64 and change of the insanity. Hey, Spade Davis. How you doing? I am currently in a lockdown state. I'm in New York, where our illustrious governor, the grandma killer, Andrew Cuomo, Captain Nipple Rings, I like to call him Nips, is doing a phased-in approach to our comeback. And yet the kids aren't in school, and most of the summer camps are canceled. Doing a stream this morning because of a comment I got on my Facebook, and actually my Facebook is the reason why I'm doing these streams for the most part. I'll actually probably do one of these to introduce myself at a certain point, but long story short, I have been screaming at the top of my lungs since mid-March, when it seemed like we were all going to shut down our society to try and handle this thing. And I have been essentially in a constant friendly argument with my entire Facebook friend population. Hey, Pookapook, I like your name. If you have any questions, just let me know. This is a short one today. I got a lot of work to do, actually. I'm trying, like a lot of you, I'm trying to actually stay in business, do as much work as I can from home, as well as homeschool my two small children who are insane. And it is virtually impossible to homeschool them. Every single day, I have about an hour and a half of time where I can actually do work. And I do have work I got to do. So this is going to be short. How's it going? Hey, man. It's going well. Where are you? I'm in just north of New York City. Mentally good, frustrated, honestly. UK. Nice. Are you guys opened up yet? Or are you doing the phase like we are? I think the phased approach is interesting. Not yet. Yeah, I figured. Yeah, it was interesting what you guys did. I'm not super familiar with the slowly phasing us too. I'm not super familiar with what happened in the UK, but I do remember that you guys were going to go Sweden, right? Sweden plan at first, and then you guys completely backtracked and went sort of New York style. And part of the problem here in the United States, and I think this probably applies around the world, is the United States are 50 states, right? And it's not like it's 50 individual countries. Obviously, America's the country, but a lot of people don't realize this about America, is that our states are really fairly autonomous. It's not quite like the EU in that there are, well, in theory, autonomous countries bound together by an economic and sort of immigrational, contract. The 50 states in the United States are again not quite as autonomous as individual countries, but there are a lot of differences between the states, and that was on purpose. And what we did in America, in the U.S., is very aggravating to a lot of us, because we treated each state and each locale, for the most part, like we treated New York City. And this was not a dictate from on high. I mean, as much power as people like to think that the president has, the president doesn't have that much power. The federal government in America doesn't have that much power. And essentially what's happened is the states, the governors of the states who are essentially, at the top of the food chain, have split into, and weirdly almost along party lines, into free states and non-free states. Free states are the ones that took in the information and decided to do what was appropriate for their state. Texas, Florida, Georgia, I'm assuming Alaska, and some of the other states, but those are the main ones. The lockdown states, the non-free states, are New York, California. I throw DC in there. There's several more: Illinois, Michigan. We just saw Wisconsin in the United States. Their Supreme Court forced the governor to backtrack, and they forced the state to open because the governor in Wisconsin tried to use a state of emergency dictate to keep their state locked down. And the Supreme Court said, you can't do that. You can't do that. That's unconstitutional. By the way, I wish you guys luck in the UK. I wish you guys luck everywhere. Personally, I am an opener-upper. That's probably not a good term, but I live currently in New York State, and this phased approach is stupid. And the main thing that we're going to look back in a year and realize that the main thing is not letting the kids go back to school is going to be, in my opinion, the straw that broke the camel's back, the straw that broke the economy's back. There are so many working parents in this world. And again, I really can only really speak to the United States with any sort of observational authority. But a lot of people don't understand this. I mean, even people that have had young kids and now have kids that are older in college, it's like you forget it. And I get it. It's understandable, if you're not in the thick of it. I'm not really familiar with what New Zealand did. I do know that China hates this, but apparently it seems like Taiwan, of the Asian countries, kicked the most ass. I'm not sure what New Zealand did. Did they just all go in the bunkers? Isn't that where all the celebrities have their bunkers? Hey, Ruthless. But the reason I'm doing this quick stream is I got a comment on one of my Facebooks, and I wanted to read it and kind of respond to it in real time. Yeah, Taiwan was good. And it's interesting because a lot of those Asian countries, I mean, first of all, most of our pandemics and viruses have come out of China. They locked down very quickly. Again, it was tough. The lockdown, even though I knew in January that this thing was coming and coming hard, I was in the minority. If you rewind back to January, who was definitive about this, right? I mean, at least in the United States, and I'm assuming much of the world because our media dominates so much, it was all about impeachment. It was all about impeachment of the president. And, some of us saw the TikTok videos coming out of China in late December, and we were looking around like, hey, these people are dying in the streets over here. This looks like it might be, some sort of viral outbreak. We knew in late December, early January, that there was this Wuhan viral lab. The first video of the chick eating the bat soup, which we don't know if that's where it came from or not still, but that came around late December, early January, if you were paying attention. But our media wasn't paying attention, with a few exceptions. And it wasn't until late January when people started piping up. And Scott Gottlieb, who is an ex-administration member, actually wrote a pretty good article then. There was that New York Times opinion piece in late January that said, I think the title was, "Is it a pandemic yet?" And then Trump banned most of the China flights. Again, he let expatriates come back. And there were some other exceptions. It wasn't as as definitive a lockdown as I would have liked. But that was early, and that was out of the blue. And if we are honest about what was happening back then, when Trump banned those China flights, everybody jumped on him, right? The entirety of the media, the entirety of the political class jumped on him, called him racist, xenophobic. There was even a thread going around that this may have something to do with the trade negotiations, that this was Trump playing like crazy Trump hardball or something. I remember thinking at the time, gee, this is a little bit too late. Should have banned China flights 2 weeks earlier. But again, you have to remember the context. I was actually surprised that Trump did that. It kind of came out of the blue for me, even though I was paying attention to it. I thought that nobody in the federal government was paying attention to this. It turns out that the CDC was officially informed in early January. And what we know about the testing is that their regulations, the CDC's internal regulations, forbid any sort of competition for vaccines. And they spent the month of January saying no thank you to South Korea's vaccine. Apparently the WHO had a vaccine, even though up until January 14th, the WHO was saying that there is no human-to-human transmission of this thing, which, again, those of us that were paying attention in late December, early January to these leaked videos from China, we knew that there's no human-to-human transmission. So there's like a bat plague and all the bats are in, it just didn't make any sense. Anyway, fast forward, let's see, UK was very slow. Yeah, UK was very slow. Again, it was tough. And I was skeptical of the March 15 to April 1 original lockdown, right? That was the nationally, in America at least, that was the nationally encouraged lockdown. It was 15 days to flatten the curve. And flatten the curve, again, we will not let this be redefined. For political reasons, flatten the curve was based on those two articles, okay? The article in Medium and then the follow-up article, the connected article in the Washington Post was all about flattening the curve. We had seen Italy at this point, and we had seen the misery in Italy. We had seen Italy go crazy. Everybody was saying, oh my gosh, we're going to be another Italy. Again, the minority of us that had been following this, we knew that Italy had some very specific and unique characteristics that didn't necessarily mean that America was going to follow in those footsteps. And also, Italy was a little bit before us. They got hit. Their spike was before our spike was going to be. And so therefore, we could look at Italy and learn from Italy. We'll go into Italy a little bit later because Italy has a lot of problems. Government mandated vaccinations was addressed. Blah, 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 blah. I'm not a vaccine expert. I tend to be in favor of them. The whole vaccine debate is like quicksand. I actually don't get the flu vaccine most years. I'm not scared of it. But I got it one year. What year was it? I think it was 2011. I got the flu vaccine. And then that was one of the years that the flu mutated. And by the time the season was in November and December, the flu vaccine that we all got was outdated. And I do know enough about that vaccine process to know that the influenza virus mutates, and therefore the vaccine is always sort of playing catch up. In a lot of years, the vaccine is outdated by the time the season starts. So, I know enough to know that. And I got really sick in 2011. I almost died. And I was a younger, buckier dude back then. I had, I was in my mid 30s, and I had 106 fever for like a day and a half, and it was over the break. It was between Christmas and New Year's, and I tried to go to the hospital, and I was so sick. I was lying on the hospital floor. I had 106 fever. They wouldn't even take me. It was the worst experience of my life. I probably could have sued the hospital, followed up with them, went through a lot of bureaucratic stuff. But anyway, my point is that, vaccines, I'm not going to go into that necessarily. And I'm not sure if it was mandated. I mean, I get the idea of herd immunity to try to get to vaccinations. Yeah, again, I don't know. I don't know about mandated stuff. I do know that they're starting to talk about government mandated tracing, a government mandated vaccine for this. Um, and I appreciate the pushback. I appreciate the discussion around this because I don't think that that's an automatic. You know, as soon as again, we were flattening the curve from March 15 to April 1. After April 1, actually, I would give it maybe an extra week. Okay, I was not exactly in favor of that initial lockdown, but at that point, I threw my hands up and I said, you know what? I've been, one of the lone people in the wilderness screaming about this virus since early January. Nobody seemed to listen. We went through February where all of our public officials and our politicians and our media were saying this is just the flu. There's nothing to see here. I mean, look at the headlines. They're all trying to sort of retroactively, change, reporting history on this. They're all trying to say that they knew that this was coming and that maybe Trump didn't or whatever. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. Nobody was paying attention through January, February through March 1. The narrative was, this is not going to affect us. This is just the flu, blah, blah, blah. Then March 1 to March 15 was sort of the ramp up to hysteria. And then it sort of exploded mid-March. Everybody went from nothing to see here to, oh my God, we're all going to die. Lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. Middle of March, I thought that the blanket lockdown was a bit harsh. But it's one of those things that you realize that you're in the minority. Like, what am I going to do? I don't have a radio show. I don't have a public voice. I'm not a politician. And it's one of these things where you're looking at the media, you're listening to podcasts, and you're taking in information. And at this point, there's nobody saying what you're thinking. Through the whole of January, the only people that were talking about a possible pandemic were early in January. Tucker Carlson did a piece on it, and then there was the Scott Gottlieb article, and there was that New York Times "Is this a pandemic yet?" opinion piece. But those were kind of the only three. Go out there and get the virus. Sure. I'm assuming that you want to stay in, and that's fine. Seriously. I have yet to hear a good explanation as to why the alternative strategy, which we have been pushing since mid-March, early April, to lock down and quarantine the elderly and at risk, and even if you are scared, it's fine. No judgment. Seriously, if you are frightened by this is a frightening thing. This is really scary. I get it. But we have known some pretty basic hard data and facts about this thing from the get-go. And it looked really, really bad in late December, early January. That's when I was freaking out. I bought masks back then. Everybody I knew was like, you're nuts. I'm like, have you bought masks yet? I had people send me pictures of themselves in tinfoil hats in January because I was talking about this. Didn't hurt my feelings. Thought it was funny. But I knew I was right. But when you follow the data, you have to realize that we started off with these Imperial College models, right? Where the death toll, the mortality rate was pegged at 3 to 5% by the WHO. And this was, magically after the 14th of January when the WHO decreed that there was no human to human transmission. And then boom, 10 days later, it's 5% mortality rate. We already knew that this thing was weirdly contagious. We didn't know how much more contagious it was than the flu, right? We've seen those charts. There's, MERS and SARS and smallpox. We knew that this wasn't smallpox level infectious or smallpox level death, but we knew it looked like it was probably more contagious than the flu. We weren't sure how much, and we weren't sure about the mortality rate because, again, thank you, China. The freedom of information is such an important thing. And from the very beginning, we have seen that dishonesty is part of the virus. China was dishonest. I don't know where it came from. I'm not going to get into whether it was weaponized or it was constructed or it was, came from a bat or whatever. I think we're probably going to find out or we're not. The fact is that it's here. But when we realized that this thing was not 5% mortality rate, which, by the way, would have been, you know, 5% mortality rate was something that's really weirdly contagious. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you're not going to escape that, right? That is 100 million dead. That is 500 million dead. That's like our Spanish flu, right? You got to remember, when the Spanish flu happened, there were a lot less people on Earth. Oh, you have a blessed day too. I'm sorry, I'm not answering all this stuff. I'm kind of ranting a little bit. Thank you for joining, Ruthless. But my point is as the weeks and months went on, we realized that this thing was not 5% mortality. We realized it was not 3% mortality. And you could see it ticking down to 1%, 0.5%, 0.1%. Right now, I believe that the CDC has this saying at a conservative 0.07% overall. And this is based on the number of cases, the denominator that they know they have. I've always contended, and a lot of people who are a lot smarter than me have also always contended, that math is going to rule the day here, right? So we do know that 98% of the people that catch this thing don't have any symptoms, or they don't know that they have it. 50% of the people that catch this thing overall don't feel a thing, right? 98% of the people either don't feel a thing or it's so mild that it doesn't matter. 2% get really sick, get like flu sick, bad sick. Over 50% of the deaths in the United States are from nursing homes. And again, I'm going to go back to this, and I'm going to keep going back to this because this is important. But one of the few data points that we've known from the very beginning with this stupid Chinese virus, and I'll say it, Chinese virus, was that it kills old people, right? We saw that in Italy. That was why Italy was Italy. And yet we weirdly didn't protect our elderly very well. Again, we locked everybody down, every single person. And it goes back to the governors, right? America is a state, or is a country made up of 50 states. It's a republic, all right? And this goes into the whole electoral college thing. Like, why isn't the popular vote the fucker? It's like, dude, go back to your third grade civics. All right. That's not the way it was designed. It was designed the way it was designed on purpose. All right. The states are very autonomous. They really are. They're supposed to be. And the federal government is supposed to be a sort of an overseer, a facilitator. And the governors of our states have a lot of freedom, there's that word again, to handle their state's business the way they see fit for their state. And what we did after March 15 to April 1 is we all locked down, and then we kind of all stayed locked down. We just stayed in. This was, the March 15, everybody stay the hell inside strategy was a reactionary, oh my God, we didn't see this coming. We have to overreact to fix the fact that we did not react properly in January. And again, I still think that Trump banning those China flights was a great decision. The problem is in January and February, there was not the political will to do this. There was not the media support. And you cannot discount the media in this country. The media was 98% in January. They were on impeachment. In 98% in February, they were like, there's nothing to see here. This is just the flu. March, they morphed into, oh my God, freak out. And they've been in freak out mode ever since. And you have to remember that the media is located in New York, DC, and LA. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I live in New York. I like New York. I like LA. I've lived there. I've actually been to DC a lot. I live near DC. It's okay. But if you don't understand and grasp what that means to the national discussion and the national policy discussion, you're not really going to understand what's happening and what needs to happen. And so we have the governors of New York and California and Michigan and Illinois clamping the hell down on their people, making them stay inside, forcing them to do what they want, taking away their civil liberties, forcing these phased openings based on what? because they're experts. They have made so many bad decisions. The experts have made so many bad calls along the way here. And where this goes immediately, if you start to question the experts, you get sort of called anti-science. And I love this, this name calling, but that's stupid, right? Scientists are not perfect. Epidemiologists know a lot. Virologists know a lot. I'm sure Fauci and Birx and all these people are very learned, very, very, very learned. And I would love to get stuck in an elevator with these people and learn a lot about viruses and whatnot. But if you're going to sit here and pretend that these people have not been wrong as shit in big, big ways along the way, then you are lying. You are not being helpful. You are not being honest. And I don't really blame them. I don't think anybody did this on purpose. But if you take the guy Neil Ferguson in the UK, let's see, is my UK guy still here? This is a guy who came up with the Imperial College model that did include social distancing in it, predicted gazillions of deaths. And this chart was apparently, they just had an article in the Telegraph that said that the software, they found out that the software was buggy and it was terribly written software. And so, who knows? I'm not a computer scientist either, but there was a lot wrong with that model. And that was the model, along with the Washington State model, the Murray model, that we used to lock the fuck out of everything down. Excuse my French. I don't think that's French. But we use these worst case scenario models to lock down. We very quickly realized that these models were wrong. They were worst case scenario models. Of course, we should take them into account, but we followed them blindly. And I really do believe at this point, a lot of human nature is happening, right? There's a lot of people that bought into this, and they made very important policy decisions based on these two models, based on, these wildly exaggerated, death percentages. And now they're refusing to budge. They're refusing to pivot. They've been refusing to adjust the strategy since April 1. The only major spike we had in the United States was in New York City. It kind of makes sense, right? The subways were a big problem. We didn't shut down the subways until last week. But I understand why we kept the subways open. Lived in New York for 30 years. Subways are a big deal. Again, this is a lot more complicated than everybody on every side makes it out to be. It's true. And I know I'm on one side. I'm firmly on one side. I'm on the open up side. I don't see how it's that much worse to have the people that want to go out. Yes, they're going to catch the thing. If you're old, if you're fat, if you're scared, I don't mean that in a pejorative way. Don't take offense to it. Stop being such a baby. Seriously, this thing is scary. If you're scared, stay inside. We'll start a GoFundMe for your Netflix. We'll deliver you food. We'll keep you safe. Let the rest of us go out. We'll get naked. We'll gather in the middle of the country and we'll rub together. Rub against each other, and we'll all catch the virus. There will be some that die. Yes, there will be even some younger people that will get very sick and die. We know that. But then it'll burn itself out, and you guys can come out of your hidey holes, and we'll get back to work, because we're killing the economy. We're killing our way of life. We are destroying our children's future out of a really kind of like baffling refusal to shift strategies when we have new information. We knew that those models were absolute fantasy very early on. We saw on the Diamond Princess. The Diamond Princess, the cruise ship, was full, had 700 elderly fat people with COPD on board. They came out of that with a 1% mortality rate. This was early. Out of 700 people, 7 people died. And only 70 people caught the darn thing. And you have to remember, the Diamond Princess, they found out that they had some cases on board. They quarantined the boat. Again, that's what quarantine is, by the way. I know this title right here is ironical, right? We're not in quarantine. You quarantine sick people, All right, that's what you do. You don't quarantine healthy people. You only quarantine healthy people when you don't have any other better ideas. And yeah, maybe between March 15 and April 1, we didn't have any better ideas. I actually thought that we did. I've been advocating for this sort of alternative plan B, let's call it plan B, for a long time. But we knew that the curve in New York City especially was flattened in easily by mid-April, easily, if not before. And we refused to change strategies. Anyway, I'm going off topic a little bit, but the governors, it's very interesting because the main question that I had from my Facebook friend was this, and I'll put this up here. All right. This ongoing debate has sparked a question and an observation. The observation is illustrative and not to be misconstrued with name calling. That's important. Nobody likes name calling. Question: what possible agenda would our leaders, governors, have to not want to get things back to normal, other than it poses a greater meaningful risk to society versus remaining cautious? Okay, so that's essentially the question. Let's see, go to the next part of it here. Think about it. These leaders will have a much easier time doing their job and staying in power if they have economic progress and happy people. You would think so. So why aren't they jumping back into opening everything up? I'm sure they want to, likely because they are able to weigh the risks and upsides and have chosen the lesser of two evils. Okay, I would argue that they probably don't have any more information than the rest of us. They don't have any secret information, but okay, let's keep going. What other motivation would drive the current policy? And don't feed me any of that half-baked conspiracy bullshit. You know who you are. First of all, the idea that you posting sort of alternative articles and facts and takes and theories is not necessarily, conspiracy stuff. I think, again, you know who you are. If you check my Facebook page, I've never really posted anything or talked about anything that was super conspiratorial. I even stayed out of that plandemic whole thing, although I did watch it, and I don't like it being censored. I like it being questioned, and I like it being argued about, but I don't like it being censored. But anyway, nobody's doing conspiracy stuff here. Observation: a child will want something and not understand why he or she can't have it right then and there. The child has an inability to process all that goes into securing that desire, cost, risk, visibility, blah, blah, blah. The child merely focuses on what the want. Typo. The debate about opening up or continuing caution is starting to feel a little bit like a parent-child dynamic. Gee, I wonder who the parents and the child is in this situation. The people on either side of this debate are clearly not children, so what gives? Why can't people separate what they want from what is feasible musing over wash your hands? So overall, the question here is, why are the people like myself who want to open up, why can't we understand that our leaders are fearless, expert, smarter than thou governors and leaders? Why don't we trust that they're doing what's in our best interest and what they're doing is the smartest thing that can possibly be done? I know that that's not the question. I'm reading into it a little bit. And then also the other part of the question is why would they do this? Because yes, I would agree that the governor of New York, especially, and the governor of California, especially, they absolutely realize that the states are about to go bankrupt. Now, bankruptcy in states and state and municipal pensions and all that sort of stuff is a huge subject. I'm not going to go quite into that, but I will concede, and it's pretty obvious, not even a concede. I mean, I've said this. Not that I've denied it, but Governor Cuomo, I'm just going to take my governor, absolutely is looking at his state tax coffers, and he's weeping right now because he's up Schitt's Creek with a turd for a paddle. Okay. And there was actually even a news story that came out late last week and said that that tax revenues were down 40% in New York. And that is beyond unsustainable, right? That's crazy. I think that part of that, if we go straight from there, the first hop is your question was about the motivation. Um, the motivation here, I think, is that they think that they're going to get a bailout from the feds. They see that the feds have turned on that printing machine, and they want to get some of that goodness, right? Some of those goodies. Never mind that the rest of us only got a little bit of the goodies. By the way, they turned on the printing press. They hooked up a fire hose to it. They printed $6 trillion that we didn't have. And we each got $1,200 one time. Anybody who thinks that the federal government can substitute for our economy, our vibrant organic economy, even for like a week, is nuts. You're crazy. All right, anyway, I'm getting off topic. So let's go back to this here. All right, so blah 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 blah, agenda blah, 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 policy. So obviously, yes, it's not a binary choice. It's not, stay inside forever or come right out immediately. And again, we do this, right? And I've tried not to. I've tried. The people that want to stay in, I realize that you don't want to stay in forever. Okay, I've never said that. I'm not going to do that to you. That's not the way I argue, and I don't think that that's an honest way of arguing. That's a very straw dog kind of straw man way of having a discussion. But the idea that so back to that, I know that you don't want to stay inside forever, but you do have to admit a lot of you guys and gals have been talking about staying inside until there's a vaccine, or staying inside until we can test everybody in the country. And that's just a whole other rabbit hole, because you guys haven't thought through this either. It's not really feasible. But back to the governors. So motivation number one, I think that they think that public pressure and a need to just have it done, it's going to get so bad that they think that the federal government's just going to have to bail them out. I think we're going to see if that happens or not. And it's not just Trump. It boils down to the fact that the federal government, again, has already printed $6 trillion that it didn't have in the first place. This is above and beyond what our deficit was, right? And who's buying our debt? It's China. Like the whole thing is not really that feasible. So these governors, I do think to a large extent, are waiting for and hoping for a federal bailout, right? I think that that's in their minds allowing them to stay locked down, to stretch out the phases. But here's the main motivation. This is a very long way to answering your question, but I had to kind of get a lot of context in there. The fact of the matter is that politics is politics, right? You have Newsom, you have Cuomo, and you have, the other people. They're looking at this situation and they're saying to themselves, and whether they're making this calculation out loud or not, they're trading long-term deaths for short-term deaths, right? They're trying to avoid as many short-term deaths as possible. And I don't want to say that they don't care about the long-term deaths. That's not what I mean. But there is the now, and there is the visible, and there's optics, right? If you open up right now, if you go Sweden, you go Georgia, you go Florida, right? Just take Georgia and Florida. Georgia and Florida opened up, and they got an initial spike, right? And we all knew that there was going to be a spike. You open up, there's going to be a spike. Duh. And there's another straw argument. Nobody has ever said that there's not going to be a spike, right? When Georgia opened up and Florida opened up and Texas opened up and there was a spike, there was a whole bunch of people who had previously said that Georgia was going to die and Florida was going to die. They said, see, there's a spike. And we said, who said that there wasn't going to be a spike? Come on. It's dishonest. But those governors took a political risk there because they said, look, we understand that there's going to be a short-term bad, and we feel like we need to make that calculated decision in order to keep the long-term from being worse. And I actually think that Georgia and Florida and Texas, everybody thinks that they went raw dog on this, right? They completely, went from total lockdown to total open up. That's not it at all. People in Georgia are still, cutting hair from across the room wrapped in hazmat suits. I mean, it's stupid. But again, what's the motivation for a governor to stay locked down? And again, I'm telling you, it's politics. And it's the potential that they're going to get bailed out. If they took a time machine and they went 4 months from now and they found out there was no way in hell that the federal government was going to bail them out, I guarantee you that their policy would shift a little bit. I don't know how you would fix the political calculation, because in New York State, which I live in, and I really feel like should open up yesterday. And again, the fact that kids aren't in school, huge problem. It's going to be the straw that broke the economy's back. And the fact that kids aren't in summer camp. New York City kids can't go to summer camp. What the hell do you think is going to happen in New York City in the summertime, guys? It all comes down, again, back to the idea that, look, these people are people. Cuomo is a person. Am I smarter than him? I don't know. Is he smarter than me? I don't know. I'd say we probably are about similar, right? I don't trust him to always make the right decision all the darn time. And it's not because I don't like him or I inherently distrust him. I'm not the biggest fan. But even a red state governor, I don't trust DeSantis to make the right decision all the time. I don't, take a purple state. I don't trust the governor of Colorado to make, I just don't trust. There's nothing wrong with not trusting these people. And it's not like and a lot of people feel the same way as I do. Skepticism is good. What happened to the bumper sticker question authority? Well, we take that bumper sticker off when a virus comes around. Again, the experts and our leaders have been wrong over and over and over and over again. And that doesn't mean we think that they're bad people. It just means that we're smart enough to realize that they were wrong. What are we supposed to do when we're wrong? We're supposed to admit it. We're supposed to move. We're supposed to adjust. We still haven't admitted that Ferguson in the UK was wrong. And not only was he wrong, he was a hypocrite. He's banging some married woman, getting her infected. I mean, it just, the whole thing boggles the mind. And then you have our so-called leaders, the media leaders, experts, and the political governments and experts totally being hypocrites as well. You have Chris Cuomo, the brother of the governor, catches this thing apparently, supposed to be totally locked in his basement, gets busted, going outside. He went to a bar, and actually, I think he's probably fine. Did he infect anybody at the bar? Maybe, I don't know. Again, for somebody who doesn't think he should have been, locked in his basement in the first place, I kind of understand it. But on the other hand, that's hypocritical as hell. And normal people look at this and they see the idea of blind devotion and blind allegiance to a governor or a mayor or a president is stupid. Who does that? Who does that? It is our duty as adults to question everything. And the question about what motivation would a governor have to continually, before our very eyes, implode a wonderful, vibrant economy, just to destroy it every single day, that the New York City economy is shut down, is devastating, is absolutely devastating. The New York City and the New York tri-state part of the economy is, I don't know what the figure is, I'll find it for the next one, but it is a huge contributor to the national GDP. And I don't want to get into this blue state versus red state thing. Red states contribute too. But yes, the hot pockets of economic activity are in the blue states. New York City, Silicon Valley, LA, Hollywood. But remember, the richest place in the United States, by far, is DC. And if you don't think that that's a problem, We got other problems. But back to the motivation. Why would a governor keep destroying his or her state's economy? And the insinuation of this Facebook comment is that they wouldn't do this unless they were absolutely, positively sure that they were making the right decision in the interest of public health. And I just don't agree with that presumption. I don't agree with the premise, the premise and structure of this question. I don't think that this is correct. The motivation is very simple. Again, I think politics is a big one. And again, they don't want the short-term deaths. They don't want the spike. Cuomo doesn't want the spike, even though we flatten the curve. And they think that they're going to get bailed out by the government. I think it took me an hour to say that. But anyway, I was ranting a little bit. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for the questions. Daily quarantine. I may be back later. Please bookmark, follow, set your alerts. You're welcome to participate. Try my best to loop people in, let you talk, and leave questions and comments. And yeah, woohoo, rock and roll.